What is up, my man? Back and better than ever. We had
What is it? Season episode 1, baby?
yeah, man. After a little hiatus, took a little time off, recharged the
Summer
batteries,
doldrums.
but I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Good for
Ready
you,
to
bro.
go.
My batteries don't get recharged during the summer. I am the opposite of recharged. I am drained. All right. I'm an iPhone 16 battery after 6 hours in the day. I need to get plugged back in.
Yep. Hey, you know, there was no time off. There was no rest for the weary. But hey, I feel like we got a whole new batch of stuff to talk about. And that in and of itself, I might be running on fumes, but it's going to drive me. All these new topics, all these new things we got to talk about. So,
We've got a lot to talk about.
bro, I, so I've always wanted to get out there on the water. Maybe one day I could be fortunate enough to own a boat. Not
I
today,
know
not next week, but gotta have goals in life.
you're an aquatic man.
I, I'm pale, but I like I like the times I've been able to get on other people's boats, go to a little, little cruise. It's nice. It's tranquil. That would be an amazing way to recharge some batteries. But now, having second thoughts.
I'll tell you one thing. I know you're having second thoughts right now, but there was nothing that made me happier on the weekends, especially like when I was working at the state attorney's office with you, than going out on a boat deck.
Yeah. I mean, how can you be mad? How can you be
Nope.
mad? I can't
Sitting
even
on the
compare it to
sandbar,
golf because I can find a way to be mad on the golf course even though I'm outside. But this, what's there to be mad about?
all good.
Well, having said that, as you know, as everyone has probably seen, pretty high profile, national exposure type case down here as it relates to George Pino and that fatal day back in 2022. Not guilty verdict came back. And, you, you got me. The talk we had the other day, I started looking, I started researching, and whew,
The last thing
I don't
anybody
know.
wants is Ian Duncan going on a deep dive.
I mean, by the end of it, I gotta say, I looked like, you know, they got bags under my eyes. It was clearly, I got sucked in. There was no coming back from this rabbit hole. Not till I was through to
No.
the other side.
Each time I think about this case, I mean, I just got other questions that I just gotta start researching and just going
Yeah,
left to right, man. It's crazy.
yeah. I mean, I was shocked by the result. Having heard and known the little bit that I knew, as I'm sure many had heard in passing, these details, these snippets here or there. But when I really dug into it, as I'm sure you did, now I start to realize what went on or what maybe went on and how we ended up at this point. So, I mean, you tell me, man, you're down there, you got your fingers on the pulse of the Miami Dade community. I mean, is it tense? Have things calmed down?
I think it's calmed down because of like the not guilty verdict, to be honest with you.
Really?
But it is something that most people were talking about, even people that you would think, you know, objective people. And I think he's well known within the community. I've never met him. I've never seen him before in my life.
Right.
Um, I do know some people that are family members, people that were involved in the incident. And obviously, it's been very hard for a lot of people, especially people that have been involved and
Yeah.
have family members that were involved in the crash. But I think there was a lot of sympathy for Pino
Really?
down here in Miami that you wouldn't understand, forget. And I think it has a lot to do with just people knowing him, thinking he was a good person, and then not only that, being that person who's been out on a boat and may have done something stupid on a boat, like driving impaired on a boat, being on a boat with a lot of alcohol, underage drinking, or maybe allowing some of their kids to have, be on the boat with them being underage and having alcohol. I think there was a lot of sympathy for him in the sense that they felt that this was an overcharge.
Really?
Yeah. I think that there was that thought in this community. I don't think that way. I think I think they fucked up. I think Florida Fish and Wildlife fucked this investigation up. I think he should have been charged with BUI. I still can't believe that it was a not guilty. You know what I mean? And he's lucky it was a not guilty. He's lucky that he didn't come back with that he decided not to have any of the lesser included. And I guess the state was dumb for not wanting the lessers included, because whatever they would have come back guilty with one of the lessers. And the reality is, whatever judge was dealing with this case was going to max him the fuck out.
Yeah.
That's what was going to happen. He was going to get maxed.
You got no choice.
No choice.
If you want to get elected again, you don't want to be the judge that let this guy walk if the conviction, is entered by the jury. But do you feel like it would have been the same sympathy and the same sentiment if the investigation would have produced evidence that, resulted in a DUI manslaughter charge? Would it have been a whole different analysis, or would it have been the same sympathy, you think?
I think it would have been the same sympathy.
Wow. Okay.
I think it would have been the same. I don't feel that.
No,
way.
I know that.
I'm just feeling.
I know you, man.
Pulse.
You were building jails for you, bro. You were sending them away. You weren't playing around.
Not with that shit. Even though most of the stupidest shit I've ever done in my life has been in a car or in a boat, And I think you need to be very, very, very smart anytime that you are holding the lives of anybody behind a motor vehicle or a vessel, because so many bad things could happen that you need to take that responsibility to the top.
Yeah.
You got to be the person wearing the white hat saying, I'm going to be the one that's not drinking. I'm going to be the one who's going to be super careful. I have all these people in my care. And the minute that you do something, just one little thing that makes it less safe for them, that's just reckless, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just reckless.
Yeah.
Now, we'll get, I'm sure we'll get to what the definition of reckless is and just regular negligence, because reckless is a higher standard.
Yep.
But that being said, when you put all the factors of every single thing that happened in this case, how could it not be reckless behavior?
Yeah.
How can it not be?
So you're talking about, obviously, the reckless component of what they ultimately charged him with, which was this vessel homicide felony charge that I think carried a max of 15 years max sentence.
But it's a convoluted charge, one that could totally confuse a jury. When you think vessel homicide, I feel like, it's like an Indiana Jones movie in Last Crusade, when you're taking that boat and you're just ramming people with propellers hoping that they fucking die. You know what I'm saying? Here, you're driving in a boat, somebody did something to you, and you purposefully just ram into them and somebody dies.
Yeah, you'd have
Obviously,
the intent component there.
The intent component.
Yeah.
Even though, whatever,
well,
it's not an intent component here.
We say elements, and you and I, that's second nature to us. When we're talking about the elements of this charge, you gotta have the operation of a boat. You have to have the death of somebody as a result of the operation of the boat. And you have to have reckless or willful, wanton disregard for the safety of others or the occupant of the boat to rise. You got to check those boxes. Those are your elements. That's our checklist if you're the prosecutor to prove this charge.
And you got to, but don't forget, even when you're telling and I know you know this, going back to what we know, you need to prove each one of those elements beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt.
Yep.
While element 1 and 2, in this case, are clear. Those were proven beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt.
Yep.
It was the last element which caused the not guilty, the confusion or the non-clarity of how was it explained to the jury.
So
The
let's
result was a not guilty.
so obviously there's an element that's missing there that most people are going to want to touch on when they start reading the headlines and the brief snippets that they may see in passing on social media, things like that on this case. And that element is consumption of alcohol, normal faculties being impaired. That's obviously not a component of this charge. And I think
Nope.
by comparison, when you're looking at a DUI manslaughter charge, there is, like you said, there's no intent component there. There's consumption of alcohol to the point where normal faculties are impaired and someone died as a result of you driving a motor vehicle, in this case, a vessel. You don't even have to prove that you drinking actually caused the accident. If you are above the legal limit and a death occurs, you don't have to prove that the drinking was the cause of the accident. And I bring that up because here you have this reckless, willful, wanton element that it's not easy to prove. Like you said, it could be confusing. The DUI manslaughter charge would have been much simpler, much
Right.
easier probably to prove if it would have been charged.
Right. Because there is, with a DUI or BUI
Yeah.
manslaughter, there could also be the causation element of how the death itself happened, and the negligence of the person in of themselves who passed away. But that's not a factor in this one. In this one, it that's not doesn't even come into play. And I think you're right. It makes it that much easier to prove because of what you just touched upon.
Yeah.
And, and I think this was just a fucked up, botched investigation from the beginning by Florida Fish and Wildlife. I think they fucked this up. And I think you know that I'm going to tell you this. And this is the same exact thing that George Pino said. When a person gets pulled over for DUI, you know how many drinks they always say they have?
I already know the answer
Nine
to the question. I know you know the answer to the question. Two.
every time.
Yep.
Two.
Well, I agree
Every
wholeheartedly after my deep dive into this that this is a completely, I don't want to say botched because I think botched um, automatically goes toward just just neglect, just being bad at your job.
right, just negligence on the law enforcement's
I think a
part.
lot of people who look at this, maybe not in the community, but anyone from the outside looking in, is asking some serious questions about how this was handled, why it was handled that way, and was not guilty potentially. I think it prompts them to act like the average person, the lay person looking at it, based upon his status in the community. What went on here is prompting them to ask the question: was not guilty the desired outcome?
I don't know the answer to that, man.
So
I could tell you one thing. I could tell you this. The pulse of the community here in Miami is split on it.
yeah,
I think he's getting sympathy that you would never think he would ever get. I think people outside of Miami that are not involved in this community, 100% like, what the fuck just happened? This guy was guilty as shit. It should have been a guilty, hands down.
well, I have no sympathy for him because this man said he only had 2 drinks, and then would not submit to a voluntary blood draw. And I know people are going to say, well, he did the right thing. It was a smart thing. And I don't care. If I wasn't drunk, take my blood. I want the world to know that I wasn't drunk, especially if I had 5 boats tied up on the sandbar and I was allegedly cleaning up all of their bottles and I knew that they were in my boat. But that's not what took place here. Let's dive into Fish and Wildlife, FWC, I'm just going to take you through the chronology of the events that I'm looking at that are saying are a mess, to say the least, and are suspect, potentially. First off, who pulled George Pino out of the water? Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. Trained fire rescue pulls him up out of the water. Months later, he goes, after seeing the Miami Herald reporting, he goes to the state attorney's office and says, I'm the one that pulled him out of the water. He appeared impaired to me. And that actually is what prompted state attorney's office to upgrade the charge from 3 counts of careless boating to this new vessel homicide charge, to a felony. Misdemeanor to felony. Fish and Wildlife never interviewed the firefighter that took him out of the water, the person who had first contact with George Pino. Never interviewed him. He had to come forward and track down the state attorney's office to give them the information he felt they needed. How is that possible? Then,
I don't.
go ahead, man.
Did he stick around the scene? Did he give that statement to Fish and Wildlife?
I can't imagine that a firefighter who stopped to get the guy out of the water then was like, I'm out.
I get it, but even then, the firefighter himself, him just saying that I think this person's impaired, doesn't take any, doesn't create anything, or it doesn't create a reason for Fish and Wildlife to come to their own reasonable suspicion whether or not the person might have been impaired driving the vessel. They need to come to that realization themselves. And I think it was fairly obvious that they needed to do this investigation and they didn't do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going there. I'm just saying that maybe it didn't matter what this, fire rescue person who pulled him out of the water,
It
what his
mattered
thoughts
enough.
were, whether or not that he was impaired.
It mattered enough for them to upgrade the charge from misdemeanor to felony. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but that's when it took place.
Maybe it mattered to the state attorney's office, the people who could actually charge him.
Yeah. But they're law enforcement also. So
But they didn't charge him with, and of course it's because of the amount of evidence that they didn't get at the time of the incident.
Well, let's
they didn't charge him
continue.
with BUI.
Yeah.
They didn't charge him with boating under the influence.
Maybe they
of
would
death.
have if they would have talked to this guy.
Mhm.
So let's continue. 3 Fish and Wildlife officers close to George Pino in proximity immediately following the incident, their body-worn camera footage deleted. One of which subsequently testified under oath and deposition that he saw his eyes to be bloodshot and that he smelled of alcohol. Explanation for the deletion of the body-worn camera footage? Not all of it was deleted, just these 3. The explanation is, well, we classified it as incidental. And incidental only saves for 90 days, whereas a criminal investigation would have been saved for 13 years. Okay? So, how is it that you pull the boat out of the water the next day and discover over 60 bottles, empty bottles of alcohol, 1 half-drank bottle of liquor, and a completely drank bottle of champagne, completely empty? And at that point, you're like, maybe criminal? Maybe we ought to save that footage. Let's change it.
It's the biggest story in South Florida.
Well, at that point, it might not have been. This was day after.
No, it immediately after this happened. It was the talk of the town.
Well, I would defer to you on that. So if it was, it's all the more reason.
100%. People would be coming up to me. Right after it happened, the next day, I don't know where I was. People were like, did you hear what happened to George Pino? I'd be like, George Pino? I don't know no George Pino. It was talked about.
Okay.
Immediately.
At that point, you're not saying maybe we need to change this from incidental to potentially criminal so we can store this footage. It doesn't get overwritten 90 days from now, by the way. Well, 89 at that point.
100%.
Now, on top of that, 4 hours post-accident, the blood from Katie Puig, minor on the boat, who is now brain injured and learning to walk again, which is awful.
It's just the worst, man.
It's just terrible what happened to these kids.
This whole situation is just, I mean,
Yeah.
it's poor kids, man.
But her blood alcohol was almost twice the legal limit 4 hours post accident. At that point, a crime has taken place, albeit a misdemeanor, but someone gave her this alcohol. And God only knows what her BAC was at the time of this incident. So how, again, you continue to maintain that these are classified as, in the body-worn camera storage system, this is incidental, and you're not saving this footage from the 3 officers that were in close proximity to this guy, one of which said he smelled of alcohol and bloodshot eyes. So it's gone because you determined that this was incidental. Now let's talk about your lead investigator from Fish and Wildlife, Thompson. So Thompson talks to Pino. It's all recorded. This body-worn camera footage isn't gone. And asks Pino if he would submit to a blood draw, voluntary blood draw, because legally he can't get it without reasonable suspicion, probable cause, or exigent circumstances, which we'll come back to. But
We will come back to that one. It's crazy.
Pino says, I've had a couple beers, and then says, I would prefer not to do it. At that point, Thompson doesn't say, I think we should be going and requesting a warrant. Thompson doesn't feel like, hey, I should call the 24/7 hotline that I have for the state attorney's office that's in our training manuals to ask them what to do. He doesn't say, hey, you know what? I'll take the blood under its exigent circumstances. We're going to take the blood. We're doing it. How does he not do that? And you have
And what did he testify to that?
What's that?
I think he said, and if I'm not mistaken, Thompson said, I didn't feel he was impaired, correct?
From the body-worn camera footage, I don't know what he said to. It wasn't obviously, quote-unquote testimony, but the recording of this guy says, I had a couple beers, and I was going to get to this, but let's get into it.
I'd ask for permission to draw your blood. It's up to you completely. I had 2 beers. And it's not illegal to boat and drive. It's not illegal to drink a couple beers and drive.
I feel perfect in the way that my mind was. I mean, I know what happened. I've been operating boats forever. I've done that ride 1,000 times.
You're allowed to drink alcohol and drive a boat. I'm just asking, since there was a boating accident with injuries, I always like to ask for consent of my operator to give blood. So I'd like to ask for your consent for blood. It's your choice. It's completely voluntary. It's a voluntary consent. It's up to you. Completely up to you. Either which way. You can read the form if you'd like to, or I'll read it out loud to you. It would say, I, George Pino, hereby freely and voluntarily consent to provide the Florida Fish and Wildlife, the TUSUS, of law enforcement officers 2 vials of blood as a sample for investigative purpose. I have been fully informed that the specimen will be tested for the presence of alcohol and or chemical and or controlled substances. I fully understand that I have the right to refuse to give the specimen. I have read and understood the above statement, and then if you consent, then it says I consent to giving blood, but that's what it says. It's completely your choice.
Right.
Not pressuring you. Anytime I have injuries, I always like to ask my operator, are you bleeding anywhere right now? So, I'm going to ask you again if you consent to giving blood. I just need a yes or a no, and then we can talk about some other things.
I'm fine. I mean,
I told you,
yeah.
it's nothing.
I mean, if I don't do it,
It's nothing against you. It's voluntary. If you say no, it's a no. Then I just push this away. Then we start talking about the boat. I just say I gotta get this checked off.
yeah. I prefer not to.
Okay, that's fine.
Thompson may have very well had on knee pads that day with the way he was kissing this man's ass. Well, it's not he literally says it's not illegal to drink and drive a boat. I have to ask you this. Is it, I just part of me doing my job. I've never seen this, Mons. Any other Leo with any other situation would have been like, will you submit to giving a blood draw? Yes or no? Now, maybe he's going to say, I was trying to soften him up to convince him to get. If that's the case, then you felt like you needed the blood. So,
Not only would not any Leo would have done that, the Leo would have been like this. Look, will you submit to a blood draw voluntarily? I could take it into account now. If you're willing to do this, it just looks, it looks good. It looks like you have nothing to hide. But if you don't do it, I'm going to go get a warrant.
yeah.
All right. And in the warrant, I'm going to find out what's in your blood, because I now have because all it takes, and I know you're going to get into it, but all it takes with death, and I know that the death hadn't occurred just yet, all right? But with serious bodily harm, which was evident at that point in time, it is automatic that you're going to get that warrant for the blood. Automatic.
You have to ask yourself, what's the worst that could have come of it? You ask for a warrant and the judge says no, and now you're off the hook. Fish and Wildlife tried. Okay.
Judge wasn't gonna say no. And this is just recent case law that has changed, Ian.
Yeah.
Before they were forcibly allowed.
Yes.
When I was prosecuting DUIs back in the day, you were allowed to forcibly take somebody's blood when somebody died or was serious, there was serious
bodily
injury.
Yeah. So
Forcibly take it.
let's look at the option that they could have forcibly taken it without the warrant under exigent circumstances. Obviously, you could have argued that evidence is fleeting. With every minute that passes, if he has alcohol or anything else in his system, it's being metabolized. I've got all these people, all this, emergency medical treatment. I don't have time to be going to leave the scene to go get a warrant to put this evidence in front of a judge. And by the time I get back with the warrant, it's too late. So doing that analysis, why not take the blood? And then what's your worst case scenario? It's suppressed. Evidence is excluded.
That's it. You
Yeah.
just lose that number, but it doesn't take away from what the impairment is. And most people don't know what normal faculties are, but the elements in a DUI or a BUI, and when I say BUI, I'm talking about, boating under the influence, all right, is that whether or not your normal, you were operating a vessel or a motor vehicle, and you were operating that vehicle or vessel to the point that your normal faculties were impaired, okay? Or your blood alcohol level was above a 0.08. So it can be one or the other, all right?
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is what are normal faculties, right? And it's a list. It's a list. And when you look at this accident, you might as well just check them all off.
Yeah.
Check every single one of these normal faculties off of what George Pino did. Because if you think about it, first one is to see and hear clearly, right? If you're seeing clearly and you're hearing clearly, you turn down that music while you're going 50 miles an hour, which, by the way, is lightning speed on the water.
Yep.
Okay? It is lightning speed on the water. All right? People think, oh, dude, I go 50 miles an hour in my car. Not the same thing, man. Not the same thing.
Yeah.
It is lightning fast.
And let's discuss
All right.
that, because I want to touch on that real quick. Let's add some factors to that, and then I'm going to let you go back.
Yeah.
50 miles an hour with 14 people in a 29-foot boat. How much weight is that? And the GPS, you're saying another wake was thrown that caused you to lose control of the boat from some, extraordinary size wake. Except the witnesses in your boat say there was never, a sudden movement from the boat, and they never saw any other boats. And you say you told, hey, girls, hold on. Got to get through this chop or this, these waves here. Witnesses say nobody ever warned us of anything. But anyways.
You weren't going to hear anything either, man. When a boat's going that
50?
fast,
Yeah.
It is loud, man. You can't hear anything. Even if you're yelling and you've got 11 people on the boat, you're not going to get to everybody. The people that are sitting all the way closer to the bow, people that are sitting in the back, you could only hear, the only people that can hear you are the people right next to you. So it would have been the two people that are right next to him as he's operating the vessel.
Yeah.
That's it. Nobody else would have heard that.
With that amount of weight and with that issue of not being able to warn people, and like you said, 50 miles an hour on the water is flying. Part of the reason is because there's no brakes in a boat.
It's flying.
Yeah.
No. And here's the thing. So that's element number one. All right. See and hear clearly. Number two, walk and talk normally.
Yep.
So, I mean, check that one off. Didn't seem like he was walking and talking normally after that incident.
He's going to claim he hit his head, and there was, apparently blood gushing down. But, I got to do my best to call balls and strikes. So I'm assuming that would be the defense to that.
All right. So how about this one? Judge distances.
Like the distance from you to a piling? Yeah.
Here's another one. All right. Drive an automobile or vessel safely.
Yep.
Didn't do that one. That's another check mark. All right. Make sound judgments.
Like,
there's like so many things that you could check off on that one.
Yep.
From having 11 people on the boat.
Oh, 14.
14, my bad. Yeah. 14 people on the boat going 50 miles an hour. All right. I don't even know. I don't think that there's a capacity. I think he was definitely over capacity. That boat does not unable to hold 14.
They did a lot of analysis on it, and I tried to research as well. So again, to call balls and strikes, they're saying max, it's yacht rated, so there is no max amount of people and there is no max weight. But they said, about 12 to 14. They're saying everybody was sitting. They weren't standing because I was worried, okay, if they're dancing around on the boat. They said they were dancing in their seats. I won't comment on that. But, again, it goes back to, even if that was okay to have that amount of people on the boat, if you had enough seats, you're capped out. You got to be maxed out. And how much weight is in there? So why be at 50 miles an hour or 45 and change, whatever it was?
Oh, but see, sound judgments, there's also other things in there, like why are you giving underage people alcohol?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a sound judgment.
Yeah, why does your GPS show that you never actually moved the boat or jogged the boat or turned the boat? You just kept going, hugging that left side and went right at the piling.
Well, look, but then here, this one comes to the next normal faculty. Act in emergencies.
There you go.
Check that one off. And there's one last one, which is just like kind of like catch-all, but perform everyday mental and physical tasks required in daily life. Whatever the fuck that means, right?
Yep.
That being said, you got enough things there to think. You got enough, based on all the evidence that you have there, that this person was impaired.
Yeah. Not to mention FWC's own training manuals that say treat every investigation as if it's criminal until it's not. It's a direct quote. Because you only get one shot. Another direct quote. Last direct quote.
Did they do that? Did they do that?
Oh, no. Last direct quote. Here's my favorite one. When in doubt, get the blood. That's from their PowerPoint presentation, their training PowerPoint. Instead, what this guy Thompson did, like I said, I don't want to call it pandering, but let's just say it wasn't a we can do this the easy way or the hard way speech he was giving this guy. And when he's told, oh, I'm drinking 2 beers, no blood draw, no exigent circumstances, no warrant, waits hours to call the state attorney's office, doesn't call the hotline, okay? Then within 7 hours of the accident, Mons determines that alcohol wasn't a factor. Issues his 24-hour report, and in that says that alcohol wasn't a factor. And then writes in that report that the reason that Pino said he didn't want to submit to a voluntary blood draw was because his attorney wasn't there. Except the body-worn camera footage shows nothing, no reference to an attorney. It's because he said he had 2 beers. And what does the report not contain? Any reference whatsoever to the fact that he didn't want to submit to the blood draw because he had 2 beers.
At that point, look, your attorney can do nothing about that.
Yeah. But
nothing.
How, as the lead officer, are you writing this within 24 hours of talking to this man?
I think either, without saying anything,
Yeah.
best case scenario for Florida Fish and Wildlife, they have not trained their officers properly on how to conduct
Well, here's my favorite part. A year
DUI
later,
investigation.
they still didn't figure it out, Mons. Because then they wrote a report saying that, let me make sure I read this right, alcohol was not considered as a contributing factor because no one admitted to the consumption of alcohol. I mean, either it's just complete dereliction of duty, just being awful at your job, or something else is up.
I hear you. I gotta say, this isn't happening again. I think that there's probably they know they fucked up.
Well,
and this should be a huge wake up call to anybody who takes out their boat.
Well,
because
did they know
Florida
that they
Fish
fucked
and
up,
Wildlife are not. They know, man.
Okay.
They know. They're not admitting to it, but you know that they know.
But
There's no way to not know.
Let's discuss what Rodney Barreto did. Because Miami Herald did expose, multiple articles on this, okay? Barreto comes out and writes a formal press release, whatever you want to call it, that Miami Herald publishes, okay? And in that, accuses Miami Herald of one-sided reporting, that accuse them of downplaying, burying critical context. I don't know what the fuck critical context is. Is that like, it's not evidence. So downplaying and burying critical context, putting out favored narratives, misleading the public, undermining the professionalism of their officers. Bro, your officers, you and your people undermine their own professionalism. You did that yourselves by deleting body-worn camera footage, by not getting a warrant, by not forcible drawing of blood under exigent circumstances, by not calling the state attorney's office on the 24-hour hotline to find out what to do. You did this. And then you're going to go at the Miami Herald? Meanwhile, what does Rodney Barreto, what's his side gig, Mons?
You tell me.
Real estate developer. And what does Pino do? Throughout his career, he has, as a real estate broker, brokered transactions totaling in the billions. And then Barreto says, we're going to call balls and strikes, and we're going to do the investigation by the book. And then goes on a radio show and says that he admits that he knew the guy. So, A, you handled it poorly, but B, now you're doubling down on it by attacking the media? Did the media delete the body-worn camera footage? Did the media choose not to interview the guy who pulled Pino out of the water, who happens to be trained as a firefighter? Did the media choose not to draw his blood? The media choose not to get a warrant? Like, this is you guys. Not the Miami Herald. You dicked it up. Yet,
Ian, look, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. The number one thing, and I'm telling you, as somebody who has not only handled hundreds of DUIs, all right, as a prosecutor. And on top of that, probably tried to verdict more than 30. Okay? The minute, the minute you talk to the person who is operating the vessel or the vehicle, and they tell you, I've had two, that is alarm bells in every LEO's, law enforcement officer's head, that this motherfucker's been drinking. And that it's the law of three. You multiply it by
It's
three.
like
All right,
American Pie.
it's like American Pie, baby. You just
Exactly.
multiply that motherfucker by three, and it's six. All right.
So, how does the state attorney's office end up doing what they? I mean, I understand they were stuck to a certain extent, but let's talk about it because Thompson did call. What's her name? Laura Adams. Within the hours following the accident. Not right away, within the hours. I don't know what that means, but. And she sends an email saying that she wasn't asked to respond or assist in getting a warrant. What the hell were you talking about then? Why'd they call you? What was it you were discussing in the hours after this catastrophic accident?
If I were the prosecutor on duty, all right, I'm not here to Monday quarterback.
Oh,
I know you may be. I will make some suggestions of what I think of certain things, right?
yeah.
But
What
I
would those
don't. If there
suggestions
was,
be?
that's more to the trial, okay?
Okay, all right.
But under these circumstances, if I was a prosecutor on duty, which I have been before in the past, as you have been as well, on weekends and on call at night when something does happen, and you get a phone call from the police officer, you ask about what happened. A huge accident happened on the water. Were there any was there anybody injured? Yes. How many people were injured? Were any of those injuries serious? You know that the response was going to be yes, unless Fish and Wildlife underplayed it. Oh no, it's just minor injuries. They all went to the hospital. Everyone's going to be fine.
Pull
Obviously,
bodies out of the water.
yeah. Obviously, that wasn't the case. There's no way you're going to get around it, especially when one of the young ladies passed away, and the other one, as you mentioned earlier, has a brain injury that's going to learning to walk again. So how, under those circumstances, that question didn't come up? Because the next thing would have been, let's get a warrant.
Or
Gotta
was
get
it
his blood.
or was what they observed downplayed? Well, I didn't see any signs that his normal faculties were impaired. Even if I heard that as the prosecutor, having been on duty calls just like you had, where we, you get, remember back in the day we got that beeper? When beepers were outdated, but we still had the beeper. Okay?
Yeah, they weren't even the cool ones. They were the ones, the little blocks that had them on
Yeah.
top.
Really, it wasn't a two-way. It's just like,
No.
yeah. I'm just saying, get the blood. I don't care. Get the blood.
Here's the thing, right?
If
Like,
it gets suppressed later, it gets suppressed. So be it.
here's the thing, too, right? Like, the only time maybe you would have said it in one of these instances is kind of like if you were just on the boat and some other boat banged into you, you didn't do anything, right? Then under those circumstances, maybe you would have been like, don't get the operator of that boat who got banged into's blood, right?
Yeah.
But get the other person's. Get the other person who banged into him. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But here, there wasn't a second boat involved. There was only one boat.
Exactly.
Boat
Well, there was a
going into the
phantom second boat. Just doesn't make
Whatever.
any sense. But yeah, sorry to interrupt. I gotta throw
No,
that in
you're
there
good.
because just to address this bullshit story. But go ahead.
But there you go. There was no other boat involved, and you banged in to a into a marker,
Yep.
and people were seriously injured, and one person passed away.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, any prosecutor, and I don't know if they didn't have, I don't know if Florida Fish and Wildlife underplayed it to her. My guess is they did, because she would have told them to go get that blood. Any prosecutor. A prosecutor on their third week of work on the job would have told them to get the blood.
So why do you think she resigned after having a heated conversation with her boss? and text messages that have been released.
You tell me why.
I don't know. Truly asking the question. But she had
When
a heated conversation when they were looking to upgrade the charge with her boss, the state attorney for Miami-Dade. And the next day, even though it appears as though from the text messages they ultimately talked at some point verbally, then, it was worked out, but the next day she resigns. Laura Adams. And
But I
then
thought
ultimately came back and asked to withdraw her resignation. But you're making personal career decisions now based upon something that went on that you didn't like in this case.
yeah, I don't know,
And
man.
again, like you said, I don't know the reason. I wish I did.
I didn't even know that she had resigned. I like when you brought that up. I'm like, did you just resign like a couple days ago or something after
Nope.
this trial?
Nope, before. So that's the part where I sit there and say, okay, well, as the state attorney, what was it that you didn't like that went on? What was it that did you want more? Were you concerned about something else that happened? Why tender your resignation when if you're doing everything by the book and you're content with everything that your office is doing? And it kind of dovetails in what, the last part of what I wanted to bring up, and I know you talked about it, is what they actually charge. Coming back full circle to how this started. They upgraded this from careless boating, misdemeanors, 60-day max in jail, to felony vessel homicide, but no lesser includeds and no contributing to the delinquency of minors.
Crazy. It's just crazy. And then not asking for the lesser included offenses.
I don't know why, for the life of me as the state attorney, and maybe this is what precipitated the resignation. Maybe, I don't know. Why you would not charge 11 counts of contributing to the delinquency of minors. Can you get it for your own kid? I think you can. So maybe 12. Because A, it's going to present the whole case to the jury now of everything that went on there, all criminal acts, which opens the door to all the evidence that should have been put in front of the jury. But it also, in my opinion, gives the public now a view of that you're attacking it from every angle, every which way you can, for every inappropriate thing that went on there. Nothing was being left out. And lastly, I wouldn't have just charged George Pino. I would have charged George Pino's wife. Full on Jack McCoy style.
Did you see her testimony? Have you seen that yet?
Yes. The Prosecco testimony, I saw.
In court that there was a cooler on board of alcoholic beverages. The defense showing her pictures of bottles found on board that she said she drank that day.
I had in a Yeti, I put some Prosecco and a little splash of Chambord.
Okay, and how many of those did you consume?
I had 1 or 2.
I don't think it came across well. This is a part of why I don't understand how the jury came back not guilty. I realized that the defense attorney must have done a really, really good job of throwing a lot of stuff and confusing the shit out of them where they came back with a not guilty, but I don't get it.
But maybe it was jury nullification, like you said. The jury sat there, which I think it was all men, wasn't it?
That I don't know.
I believe it was all men. They sat there, maybe they did the same analysis, which is I've done just as many dumb things in my life. I was fortunate enough that it didn't pan out this way. I know people that have done this. I don't know. I don't know what went on there. Maybe there'll be some book deals. Maybe there will be some paid interviews. Who knows? But
Ian, I'll tell you this right now. One of the main questions I would have been asking in voir dire, I would have wanted no voters.
Yep.
0 voters on the jury. I would have used every single one of my preemptory challenges on voters. If they were voters and I knew that there was something along the lines that they could have been on the jury, I would have been asking all sorts of questions to see if I could get them stricken for cause some way or another. I
Yep.
just would not have wanted them on the jury because the reality of the situation, I think you're right. Anybody who was a voter was like, fuck that, man. I've done this a million times and fuck if I'm going to jail for this. You know what I mean? It was just an accident. He's not guilty.
Yep. But again, that's where I'm looking at it and say, okay, well then I'm charging your wife with contributing to the delinquency of minors because it's almost indisputable. It's almost, automatic.
No, it's a slam dunk.
I don't want to say strict liability, even though it is. I mean, you've got kids that have their blood alcohol showing that they've got alcohol in their system. So I'd be sitting there saying, okay, maybe I'm worried that now the wife won't take the stand. I don't know how, getting into all the other evidentiary stuff we could discuss another time with his, defense counsel in the civil case, his admiralty attorney, and everything that went on there. Or how he doesn't object to his wife testifying, or I don't know specifically who called her as a witness. I haven't delved into that, whether it was the defense that called her or whether it was the state. But if I'm the state, I'm saying
the state called her.
Okay. I don't know how he doesn't claim marital privilege at that point.
I believe they called her back on rebuttal.
How?
If I'm not mistaken.
I guess they felt like, hey, we're going to waive the privilege, the marital privilege. We'll let her testify. She's going to be an advocate for us. I don't know. But if
I have
I'm
to
the
go rehash it.
state,
I didn't watch the whole trial, obviously, man. I got to work, man.
No, you and me both.
I saw bits and pieces of it. I'll tell you that much.
but how do you not consider, hey, if we charge her, now they've got some decisions to make because there's at least a year in jail for each of them.
Yeah.
And, maybe even though FWC screwed the pooch on this, maybe we can leverage this to a plea deal that helps these families get some closure, the families of these victims.
Yeah.
But instead, they left it all out. They went to trial. It just across the board was not a good look
No.
from the law
And
enforcement side.
Something that I do want to bring up before we leave for today and probably revisit this again because I just think like this is, I call this like a 2 bottles of whiskey conversation, one that takes like days to get through. All right, because I mean there's just so much legal nuance that happened within this case, but I know a lot of people are going to think, well, Lucy Fernandez's father testified that he didn't think Pino was impaired. Well, guess what? He left. Pino was still there after he left. Could have drank more. In fact, I'll bet you he drank more. I'll bet you he was impaired. Like, there's not even a doubt in my mind that there was impairment there. That he was above the legal limit of .08. They just didn't do the investigation correctly. But here we are, man.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that contributing to the delinquency of minors was such a major factor that was left on the sideline, so to speak. Because if I'm, creating themes for my case as the prosecutor, one of those I want to be is what 50-some-year-old man takes 11 teenage girls out on a boat and gives them alcohol? How is that, from moment one, I'm asking that question. And I think it sets the tone for your analysis on reckless behavior in a totally different light.
Man, look, and I've said this a million times over, and I know you've heard this from me. There's no honor in being the cool dad.
Yep.
There is nothing cool about being the cool dad. It's only a bunch of booby traps that could blow up in your fucking face.
What's the best case scenario? What's the best
Nothing.
outcome of this? You gave alcohol to at least one girl that we know of on your daughter's birthday that got her to the point of fall down drunk. That's your best outcome. You're a dad. I'm a dad. Like you said, what's the cost benefit analysis of being the cool dad here? Get out of this, assuming all goes well and that there isn't an accident on your boat.
Oh man, it's tough, and you know I deal with it from personal experience on things that have happened with this sort of situation, and it's just, oof.
Yeah. Well, hate to leave it on this somber note, man. Usually we're signing off with smiles on our face, but
No, but it's serious shit, man. Serious shit.
I feel for these
And-
families. I hope they get justice. I know they have their civil actions pending.
I believe there's only one civil action pending.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said plural. You're correct. It is just the one girl's. I don't know what if anything, the other family's gonna do. But
Guess what though?
I hope I'm never in their position.
Me too. Guess what though? Now he's got to give a deposition.
Yep. No more pleading the fifth.
Can't plead the fifth. Well, we'll get to that later. Because did he plead the fifth on his interrogatories?
Yeah, and I mean,
I don't think he
I
did.
don't
did he?
believe any. To quote Ryan Gosling, I don't believe there's any. That's a new charge. That's a new crime. I don't know if anything new can come out of this one. That he's got to be careful where he steps, and if he'll just be pleading the fifth. But I'm assuming there'll be some court intervention to determine what he needs to be.
I don't know,
compelled
man.
to testify
Where's the
about.
statute? Where's the statute of limitations on these things? You know what I'm saying? I think statute of limitations for the contributing delinquency of minor
Oh yeah, that's gone.
is gone.
But there's probably some brilliant legal minds somewhere that are much smarter than me that would potentially come up with some other
I don't
charge
think
that could be
I
brought.
don't
Who knows?
I don't think the state attorney's office here in Miami-Dade wants to fuck with this anymore.
They're just gonna let sleeping dogs lie there.
I believe so. I think this one is over.
Well, again, I feel terrible for these families, and I get animated, I get fired up about it, but it's because of that, those factors that get me going that way. Not because I enjoy talking about this stuff, but
You ain't wrong, man.
when it comes to prosecution and law enforcement, you and I both work with a lot of law enforcement officers, some good, some not so great, some in between. I think what we look for is consistency and and fairness, and I think here that's what gets me so up in arms when I see and hear the way in which this was handled. It's concerning.
Well, I understand that. Look, and it's hard because look, all law enforcement officers, human. All prosecutors, human.
Yep.
Me as a prosecutor, I used to fuck up all the time, dude. I'd always try to fix my fuck ups. But that's what I call it, practicing law. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, nobody's over here on my end or your end looking for perfection.
Right. I didn't have big fuck ups though. You know what I'm saying? I messed up.
Yeah, but there's screw ups, and then there's questionable choices that start to ask: is anybody that stupid, or was this done this way for a specific reason? Who knows? I don't think we'll ever know. Maybe they'll do one of these documentaries. Maybe they'll call you, bro. I hope I get to see you getting interviewed. I'm gonna be like,
Be on Netflix.
yeah, man, good for you.
That'd be great. Love it.
Just what you needed, Netflix,
Yeah.
right?
That's just add another problem to the list of many.
My wife will binge watch it.
Yeah, mine would too. She knows about all the shows. I haven't watched shit. I don't know shit.
They would just fast forward over the parts where we're in it. Like, oh, get that out of there. We don't need this. Well, listen, man.
All right,
Like
bro.
I said, hate to leave it on a somber note, but always
There's
appreciate
no-
the conversation. Always
Ain't no
appreciate
winners in this. Ain't no
bouncing
winners in this
ideas off you.
topic, bro. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no winners in this topic. Always gonna end on that note, but always appreciate hanging out with you. Love talking this shit because it is interesting it is nuanced and it is difficult, man.
Well, hey, if you want to go do a site inspection, let me know. If you're gonna rent the boat, I want to get out there. Check this. We'll just drive past.
I'm actually going to Ocean Reef in 2 weeks.
So jealous.
That being said, which is the greatest place in the world, which is another topic of conversation of how it's all involved in this thing. But dude, you know me, man. I ain't driving no boats.
No.
I ain't even gonna get on a boat when I go there.
Well, enjoy the time, man.
All right,
I'll
homie.
see you on the
We'll talk.
next one.
Peace.